Did you know that animal abuse is often the first sign of family abuse, such as domestic violence in the home? The Humane Society found that between 71 and 83% of women entering domestic violence shelters reported that their partners also abused the family pet. Today on The Balanced Voice, we are grateful to sit down with 3 incredible women bringing awareness to the intersection between animal abuse and domestic violence.
When I heard about the Purple Leash Project and what Purina was doing, honestly, I have to be very real here. I've never heard of this particular angle of the crisis. 48% of survivors of domestic violence stay in a dangerous home because they don't want to leave their pets behind.
That's Tamron Hall. She created the Tamron Heart Renate Fund in memory of her late sister, Ranate. Since creating the fund, Tamron has spent much time raising awareness and money for domestic violence victims and their families. We begin today's balanced conversation with an insightful discussion with Tamron Hall, and then wrap up the episode with our expert contributors, Tena Faust and Tama Lundquist. This is a packed full episode, and we hope you enjoy learning from these 3 incredible women. In this balanced conversation, we ultimately answer this question: what can we as a community do to prevent and identify potential abuse in the home? Without further ado, here's your host, Brenya Mancarios.
Welcome to the Balanced Voice podcast. We have a very special show today. May is National Pet Month, and we have 3 very, very, very important guests. First, we'll be joined with veteran journalist, nationally syndicated talk show host, and pet parent Tamron Hall to be talking to us about the nexus between domestic violence and animal cruelty and what she is doing to make sure that people can stay with their pets following the horrific reality of domestic violence. Following that sit down, we'll have Tena Faust and Tama Lundquist, co-presidents of Houston PetSet, to be talking to us specifically about animal cruelty. But we'll first start with Tamron Hall. Welcome, Tamron. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Rania. Good morning.
Good morning, Tamron. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, well, May is National Pet Month. Tamron, why is this month so special for you?
Well, I've worked with survivors of domestic violence, Rania, for over a decade after losing my sister in an incident of domestic violence. And so I've looked for ways over the years to partner with amazing people, amazing organizations, shining a light on this conversation in different ways. And when I heard about the Purple Leash Project and what Purina was doing, honestly, I have to be very real here. I've never heard of this particular angle of the crisis. 48% of survivors of domestic violence stay in a dangerous home because they don't want to leave their pets behind. I've had pets my entire life. In fact, when my sister passed away, her pet was with her. Mm-hmm. And having worked in this space for so long and not being aware of that situation, I thought, if I don't know, others don't know. So let me use this platform. Let me use my voice and partner with Purina and spread the word. And the goal is by the year 2025 to have 25% of the shelters in this country equipped not only to take the survivors, the children, the mothers, the fathers, but also the pets that they don't want to leave behind. So it's odd to use the word exciting to partner with them, but it is because I know that through things like this, our conversation today, we will help so many people. And if the word help is attached, that excites me.
It's interesting. We deal with domestic violence all the time. It's a huge area of work for our organization. We're one of obviously the largest public safety nonprofits in the state of Texas. And I'm always surprised that people will say domestic violence. It's of course, it's terrible. It's heartbreaking, but it's a personal family issue. And there seems to be this disconnect with how horrific this is for the family. And we have to, as a community, I think, understand that it's going to require all hands on deck to rescue, to save, to help a domestic violence victim, turn them into survivors, including giving them every tool, whether you mentioned helping their children or helping find an option for their pets. I didn't realize until I was prepping to speak to you today that only 10% of shelters were prepared to take in pets. That's a staggeringly low number.
It's a staggeringly low number, but I believe as we examine domestic violence, we adjust the conversation. In the early years, in fact, the last time I was in Texas, I was there for a domestic violence shelter that I worked with as a reporter when I started out in the business in the 90s. And all of these years later, it is one of the shelters that is equipped to take pets. We were getting a tour of the facility in Dallas, and we went into a little room and I heard a cat. And I said, wait a minute, there's a cat in there? And yes, we have an area for pets of the people who are here, who we are helping. So the conversation is improving. But as you know, sounding the alarm is a part of finding the solution. And to your point, for so long, this has been it's private conversation. I also suffered from that after the loss of my sister. My family rallied together. Not that we were ashamed, we didn't know how to express what had happened, even to one another. And so we peeled back those layers and healed as a family. And that's what we're doing nationally in this conversation. We're peeling back the layers to have this honest conversation. And that's why I think having the dialogue around pets, something that is so universal, you can understand that. You may not know what it feels like to be a survivor of domestic violence, but if you have a pet, you know what that love feels like. I have a 2-year-old son. I know it's not popular to say, but my dog Mayla for 17 years, they have very similar traits. They chew on things and they don't listen.
Actually, some say the pet loves even the love from the pet is so unconditional as well. Your little Moses is too. So mom is still like everything in his world.
Well, no, his comes with conditions too. It's like, Mom, give me my milk. It comes with conditions. And so, when I look at both of those relationships, I obviously would never leave my child behind, and I would not leave my pet behind. But I am in a situation where, thank God, I don't have to face that.
Yeah,
I don't face that today. But there are so many men and women, 1 in 4 women, 1 in 3 men who do face that. And they should not be judged, but they should be helped. I don't want someone to say, well, what are you thinking? You get out of there, leave that pet behind. That is saying leave my family member behind. And that's what we don't want people to have to face. They shouldn't have to face that question. Do I leave or do I leave with my pet? You will be able to leave with your pet. And that's what we're working on. So I just ask people to go to purpleleashproject.com/pet month, because this is National Pet Month, to get information. And if you're in a pet store, keep an eye out for specially marked Purina products that have our purple illuminating this message. So there's so many positive ways to face this very difficult and negative reality, but we can make a change.
And one last question, because I know your time is limited. How do you guys work together to make domestic violence shelters pet friendly?
Well, it's not that they don't want to help. It is they don't have the money and the space and the facilities. So it's about equipping these shelters to be able to accommodate the pets, having the proper caging, through all of those layers that it takes. Because as you can imagine, the first priority for the families, the survivors, and then now the equipment and the space needed. So the whole plan is to offer assistance to shelters to be able to have the facilities to take in the pets as well. By no means is this a lack of the shelters wanting.
Yes.
It, as you know, is a dollar and cents game in life. And so that's what we're looking at here.
It's such an important conversation. Tamron Hall, I've been following your work, forever. And this is such an important conversation. We followed your sister's case in 2004 and watched your passion and your heart for domestic violence just be born out of that, and the great work you've done and continue to do as, again, people who work in this space every day. We had a guest not too long ago who said, you guys do such important work, but it's really in the shadows. When someone like you talks about it, you really bring such needed light. So we thank you so much for your time, for your partnership to help all survivors, and also to keep our pets safe. This is a powerful partnership, and we encourage everybody to follow you and to go to Purina as well. Tamron Hall, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
What an incredible discussion between Rania and Tamron Hall. We're now thrilled to welcome the next 2 guests this week, Tena Faust and Tama Lundquist, to break down that conversation for us. Not only are Tena and Tama co-presidents of Houston PetSet, but they're also expert contributors here at The Balanced Voice and longtime partners of Crime Stoppers of Houston. Tena and Tama work tirelessly for the animals day in and day out, and we're incredibly lucky to have them right here in Houston. Let's jump back into our conversation about animal cruelty and domestic violence, this time with Tena and Tama.
Welcome back to the Balanced Voice podcast. We are so excited to have our two podcast contributors, dear friends of Crime Stoppers of Houston, Tama Lundquist and Tena Faust with us, co-presidents of Houston PetSet. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Hi, Rania.
How are you guys? Everybody doing well?
Doing great. Thank you.
We work so closely together. I feel like I'm their third sister, and we're twin. I mean, we're twins, but I'm, just a little different. You should see us standing together. So, okay, this, I cannot have a conversation that involves the welfare of animals without talking to you two. You guys are the premier experts, in my opinion. You have all the latest research, all the latest information, but you're also very much boots on the ground through the work you personally do and through Houston PetSet. We started talking to Tamron Hall about the work she's doing with Purina and the Purple Leash Project, talking about the fact, obviously, domestic violence is a huge issue. Certainly it spiked during COVID. And we know that so many women, so many domestic violence victims don't want to leave their pets. They don't want to leave their homes, their pets in the hands of these abusers. And that's why they stay in an abusive situation. So what Tamron's doing with Purina is trying to fund shelters so that they have the accommodations to accept these animals, because it's just so critically important for the sake of the animals who are abused, for the sake of these domestic violence victims who are abused. But you guys saw some of this during COVID and your work over the last many months now.
We definitely did. Rania, we saw this years ago, and as a small organization, it was hard for us to take this on at that time. But when COVID hit, we knew we couldn't turn our backs anymore. Not that we turned our backs, but we couldn't ignore this issue anymore. When Chief Acevedo said that domestic violence was increasing, people were at home, people were in trouble, we said, okay, it's time to start working on this program. We decided to launch Pet Protect, because Pet Protect allowed victims of domestic violence to leave their situations and still have their animals be cared for. So what we did was we took the animals in, we put them in boarding, we put them in training, we got vet care for all of these pets and kept them safe while these people figured out what they needed to do and what their next steps were.
I love what you're saying, because Houston PetSet, it's a 16-year-old organization. Is that right? 16, I think, is the number?
Yeah.
And when you started, your own words and one of your recent interviews, one of your recent discussions, you said you started it as a granting organization. You knew it was critical to be raising awareness, but then it's almost like you started noticing gaps and realizing that there was data missing and there were metrics that were missing. So you've jumped in to now offer solutions, and you've been doing that over and over and over again. I think this is another example of that. Can you talk to us about Houston PetSet at the core? What do you guys strive to do every day? How does it work, and how can community members get involved?
We actually have a two-pronged mission. We're kind of rare in that sense that we haven't abandoned our original mission. And as you said, Rania, we're granting. So we provide grants to those who are in the trenches every day doing the really difficult work of spaying and neutering, rescuing, transporting, all of those things. And we fund those who we think are doing important work to move the needle on animal homelessness and overpopulation in our city. After doing this for many years, we realized, and after looking at how much funding was already going into animal welfare, we realized that we're not getting any closer to a solution. So we said, how do we solve this? Is it solvable? And that's where data collection came in. That's where we started looking at the issue. And we started kind of revamping what Houston PetSet was. And we said, we think that this is solvable. We know it's solvable. And how do we create a solution that can be taken from Houston to other cities? And so that's where we are today. We're working, A, we're still providing grants, and B, we're still, we're working towards solving the problem of animal overpopulation in Houston.
And so when you talk about that data, what have you guys found? And what are some of the solutions you guys are working through now?
Well, we had to establish that this was an issue. We know that it is an issue because we see it every day. When we're out in the streets, when we're in these neighborhoods, we know it. But we had to actually show that it impacted quality of life for Houston citizens. So one of the studies we did came through the Kinder Rice Houston area survey. And out of that, 25% of Houstonians, more than 1 million people, said that this is either a serious issue or a very serious issue for them and their community. And when you think about that, that is a big, big problem, where 1/4 of the population says that this impacts them and they think it's a serious problem. So that's the data that we wanted to collect to establish in the community and to our stakeholders that this is a real issue for Houstonians. And if I can add to that, we also, in that same study in 2020, the Kinder Rice survey, 64% of respondents said that they would favor an increase in taxes. So, when people are saying, yes, please tax me to solve this problem, it is a big issue. So 64% of respondents said, yes, I will pay more taxes if you come into my community and take some of these stray animals out so my family can be safe. So I can get to the Metro bus safely to get to my doctor's appointments. So I can walk my children to the park and not have to worry about being chased by stray dogs. This is not only an issue about the animals, it's an issue about people, their families, the community, when you talk about animal homelessness in Houston.
It was a learning curve for me as well. And we've been working together for a really long time. But I even had to stop and say, you don't have to be a lover of animals, which to me is so weird because everybody should have a heart for any vulnerable population. They have no voice. We are their voice. But you don't have to be a lover of animals to care about this issue. I think animal welfare and animal wellness, animal cruelty, animal neglect, hoarding, all of these are systemic issues that live well beyond the animal community. So we would say, even if you don't have a heart for animals, like the three of us might, and a majority of people, you have to think of the economic impact. You have to think of the health impact. You have to think of the criminal nexus between organized animal cruelty or simple animal cruelty, maybe within communities, young kids who are growing up thinking this is okay. You have to think of the mental health issues of somebody who might be hoarding animals. These are big systemic issues that need all of us to address. Again, setting aside probably the biggest issue of them all, this is a human issue, and it goes to the humanity of people who are building thriving cities. I mean, we have to care about our animals. What is that conversation like for you every day? I mean, are you finding more and more people are on the same page, or are you still constantly having to educate people on why this is so important?
I think it's both. I think it's really both. I think our city leaders and stakeholders are realizing that this is an issue. And it was because we collected that data when we showed that this is a problem. It's a community problem. It's a public safety problem. It's a public health problem. It is a problem when you look at animal issues nationwide and even worldwide. We are compared to third world countries when it comes to how we care for our animals. We are that far behind other cities. So if you're talking about economic development and you want to bring a large corporation in and, Houston's beautiful, we do so many things really well. We have so many reasons to be proud of this city. But when you look at where are you going to house maybe thousands, tens of thousands of employees, and you can't find a neighborhood that is safe for these families to come into, that's a real issue. When you have a Super Bowl that is hosted here and their number one complaint is that there are stray animals running on the streets, that is a big issue. How do we want to be thought of as the fourth largest city in the US and the 9th largest economy in the world? How do you want to be thought of? So there are so many ways to go with this, Rania, but to answer your question, yes, we see stakeholders finally starting to look at this as an issue that needs to be addressed if we want to be very proud of Houston, if we want Houston to grow and be successful. On the other side of it, we still have a lot of education to do in the streets with the community. We can't have dogs that are unspayed and unneutered. We can't have strays that are running around out there suffering greatly, reproducing greatly, affecting how our residents live, affecting how the elderly live their lives because they've got packs of dogs living under their houses. So we do have to educate the public. We have to legislate where we can't educate. So it's a little bit of both, and we get the leaders on board, and then we've got to get the community up. And then the community saying, yes, I will spay and neuter, just provide the services, or provide a veterinary office that's within 30 miles of my house. So it's always a balancing act. But I think we're making great strides by getting leaders and stakeholders to realize that this is an issue that belongs to Houston in a unique way.
I've been obviously following the work you guys are doing this legislative session, and I want to get into some of the laws that you are critical. I mean, there's no question they have to be passed. But the Texas Humane Legislative Network, you were having a conversation not too long ago, and just talking about the state of where things are now. And this actually, I knew that Houston didn't have a tethering ordinance. I knew we leaned on the state statute. But I knew that the state statute as written is not the best. And I wanted to talk to you about that. But what I didn't realize was that there were 1,100 cities in Texas. Only 200 of them have strict tethering laws. That is shocking. And so those laws indicate, you must be around an animal when tethered, or there were strict time constraints on the tethering of an animal. Only 200 cities when there's 1,100 cities in this booming state. Can you talk to us a little bit of where things are legislatively and certainly what you're hoping to pass this session?
Rania, that's a really good point about the cities not having this ordinance, and it's why a state ordinance is so necessary to cover all of these cities that don't have a policy around what it means to leave an animal outside humanely. We're working on HB 873 SB 474, and this is an adequate shelter bill. And what it says, or Safe Outdoor Dog Act, and what it does is it provides humane tethering. It eliminates the use of heavy chains or inhumane chains that are either not good for the animal or they're not safe for the public because they can rust. It also defines what adequate shelter is. Right now, adequate shelter can be defined as a burned out car, a tree limb, anything that provides even a minimal amount of covering. And it also says that you have to provide potable or drinkable water for your pet and food. And it eliminates eliminates the 24-hour provision that owners have to rectify the situation. And so it does not make sense. There's no other law on the books that says, oh, you're drinking and driving, we'll give you 24 hours to sober up and then we'll retest. Or,
I think, Tina, explain it. I'm going to interrupt you only because this is, again, basically the way the law is now is if someone has identified an issue, the law says, well, we'll come back tomorrow, make sure you've cleaned it up, done whatever. And I mean, what is that? To your point, there's no other area of the law where we say, we'll come back, give you a chance. How is that possible? And how has that existed all this time? And how is it not yet changed? You guys will change it this session. We will rally behind you. Everybody needs to rally behind you guys to make sure that happens. But how has that been the case?
It was a law that was written just to get some law on the books. We are so far behind in terms of adequate laws protecting animals in this state that was a compromise, if you will, at the time. But it needs to be taken out. And that's what this House Bill 873, Senate Bill 474 strikes, is that 24-hour clause. And it is absolutely necessary. This is not an irrational bill. It's a very logical, well-written, sound bill that basically just gives very adequate protection for animals. There's nothing radical about it. It is quite conservative. And I might add too that we have anecdotal information from the law enforcement that we've worked with that says, please help us have a law that backs up what we really want to do on the streets when it comes to animal welfare. And it's not punitive either. The law enforcement officers do not want to go out. Let me start that over. The law enforcement officers do not want to go out and ticket. They don't want to go out all the time and just create cases that they know they've got to bring into court. But what they can do is educate if they have the laws to back them up. So they can go out and say, listen, I could ticket you now, or you can get this taken care of. And they're really wanting those laws that are on the books right now in Austin to back up the work that they're doing on the streets.
It's watching the birth of humane treatment of a group of people. That's what you're talking. It's like, that's what I keep thinking of. It's where it hasn't existed, and you guys are pushing and advocating and working so hard so that a sector of our population can simply be treated humanely and fairly under the law, and to erase confusion. Because we've worked together for a long time where we'll have wonderful community partners who are so frustrated, but maybe screaming at the wrong part of the law. You know, they're upset with law enforcement or the DA when really there's no laws on the books. So we need to direct it to education. So we work together to change laws so we can enact things. We have maybe wonderful laws, but our law enforcement aren't trained. So we've been working together to fill the gaps wherever necessary. How do you feel this legislative session is turning out? And do you need a last effort push? Can we be helping in any way? People listening, what can they do?
Well, the HB 873 is in calendars, and so we need it kicked out of calendars. We need it set so that it can go to the Senate, where we're sure that we have the support to pass this bill. But as you know, Rania, things can get stuck in calendars, and that's where a lot of bills go to die. That's not going to happen to this bill. We need our committee chair to kick that out so that we're able to get the Senate to vote on it, where we know we have the support, and make this a law once and for all.
This balanced conversation is made possible by Brigitte and Bashar Kalai, Hallie Vanderheider, Sippy and AJ Karana, and Deepwater Productions. If you're interested in furthering our mission of facilitating balanced conversations, offering real solutions, contact us at thebalancedvoicepodcast.com.
The world is behind you. I mean, the narrative around animal cruelty has changed so much over the last 10 years, where you have, celebrities, public figures making this parts of their platform. I just want to quickly add that Preventing Animal Cruelty and Torture, the PACT Act, is now a federal anti-cruelty bill that passed recently. So, you have the federal government stepping in and saying, we will be a last straw if necessary. Let's talk about where the conversation needs to be going. I mean, you talk about the role of spaying and neutering, the ultimate solution, but we certainly know that that's costly, and we need, as you said, clinics and veterinarians that are easily around us so we can take care of this. We looked at local ordinances, state issues, those things need to be passed. I found it interesting that you have been talking about elevating the animal community in general. I was one of those people, we talk about adopt, don't shop, adopt, don't shop. But I've also heard people say sometimes being able to spend $5 at an adoption fair minimizes the value of an animal. Can you talk to us about that?
I think it goes back to what you said at the beginning of your statement in elevating the status of animals. If 94% of families who have pets consider them a family member, then why are they not treated like a family member? So why is a $5 adoption even acceptable? We're saying this dog is worth $5, and if you come and get this dog, you could get it for $5. But do you know that it costs hundreds, if not thousands of dollars? For sure, thousands of dollars over that dog's lifetime to care for that animal. And putting $5 on the head of a dog really devalues what they do. I have my pit bull, and he was a castaway. I mean, truly a castaway, a nuisance in society, shot probably multiple times because people didn't want him in the yard. He's 5 years old and never lived in a home. He was considered a nuisance because Houston manages our our stray population like they are a nuisance. They're like rodents, that are shot at, picked up and killed. And these are pets that we domesticated. So when you take a dog like Sunny and then you bring him, train him a little bit, get him socialized, and you bring him into situations where he is a therapy dog for felons under the age of 19, he brings value to society. And these dogs, in domestic violence situations, 60% of people leaving domestic violence situations say that they want to bring their pet with them because it provides comfort for them. It might be the only comfort that they have. They might be afraid of what's going on in their home life and what's coming, but they find comfort with these animals. So these animals, we know, provide value in society, and we need on a state, community, and maybe nationwide level to start recognizing their value.
As we work together, and again, we're so fortunate we've worked together for many years. Education has been a big area, going into communities, talking to kids as young as pre-K and kindergarten about how to care for an animal, how to properly be around an animal, what to do if you see a stray animal. And this conversation grows and grows and grows and evolves and changes up until communities. We're up and, dealing with all age groups about this. What else can we be doing to help curb what we're seeing in Houston, and honestly in many major cities across the country?
It goes back to what you said earlier. You asked if we were making progress, and this needs to be a conversation at every table. We need to bring animals to every situation, whether it's the economics of a city or a state, the health of the city or the state, the safety of a city or a state. It needs to be we need to be at every single table bringing this issue to light, because it's been ignored for far too long. As you said earlier, out of 1,100 cities in Texas, only 200 have animal protection ordinances. What does that say about this as a priority? And as you said earlier again, Rania, if you don't care about animals, you have to at least care about the civility and the safety of our communities. And that's why this has to be an issue, or this has to be a conversation at every table. And that's what we're working to do, is to continue to elevate this. And Crime Stoppers has done a great job of continuing to add animals to your platform at every event we attend. Every time you talk about the safety of a community, Rania, you bring this up, and you have been a true champion for this cause. And we can't thank you enough. It's the work that you've done and the way that you've brought attention to this issue is invaluable. Thank you.
Well, I've had two very good leaders, two people who have taught me very well and have been very inspiring. You two are really the best I've ever seen on this issue, not because it's the heart, and I've seen you shed many tears when talking about this issue, when showing videos on animal cruelty, but I've also seen you go into some of the most dangerous parts of our city just to look face to face at what's happening with animal cruelty. I've seen you meet with every city, county, state elected official on this issue. I've seen you talk to nonprofit partners, business leaders. You guys have really led the way. I love the new website you have with the city of Houston. Give our pets a hand. GoPAH, GOPAH.org. Talk to us about that. Should people be going? I think people should be going to and getting resources and information. Tell us about it.
I got information out of that. And that grew out of our organization by a woman who is very forward thinking. And she said, we need a neutral website in Houston. And it is ours. And she created it, and it was funded by the city. And so there are two partners involved, but we really wanted something that's not branded Houston PetSet, because we want to help animals. We don't always need it to be a Houston PetSet thing. So we have this website, and it says, it just, as you said, it provides resources for everybody who owns an animal, whether it be, where do I get training? Where do I get low-cost veterinary services? How do I feed my dog the best way possible? What are the basics? We have the little pyramid that I love. So there's the food pyramid that says you've got to have these certain things to be the healthiest person you can be. Well, this is the care pyramid of dogs and cats. What do they need? What are the base needs? And then if you have the resources, what are the best ways to care for your dogs? But it really defines what pet ownership and good guardianship looks like. And we think everybody should go to it. It's GoPaw. There are resources on there about training, about feeding. As we said, anything that has to do with a pet, it's on there. And it is for the city of Houston. It's for the area to go and have those resources that they might not otherwise have.
And what is your message to somebody listening who feels like they can no longer care for a pet? What is your advice to them?
We love to keep pets in a loving home. So if there's somebody that doesn't have the resources to care for their pets, please reach out to us. Go to our website, HoustonPetSet.org, and we will try to either provide you those resources, whether it's veterinary services or food, or we will find somebody that is able to do that. It doesn't make sense to take an animal out of a home where that pet is loved and cared for, but just they've hit a bump in the road and try to rehome it. It's very expensive to rehome an animal. It's more economic, and it makes so much more sense to keep an animal in a loving home, and we'll try to provide those resources for them.
Tena and Tama, you are really, I'm not saying it lightly, you are angels for the city. Everything you do for the animals, it's overwhelming and unbelievable. Your work directly impacts our city and county and state for sure, but it's an inspiration across the country. Where can people be following you to stay in touch with your work?
www.houstonpetset.org. Please follow us on that website. You also have the links to all of our social media. And yes, please follow us, because we also have links to 70 plus animal nonprofits that are currently residing in Houston and doing amazing work on the front lines. We cannot imagine what our city would look like without these thousands of people working on behalf of the animals. So shout out to them too. But yes, please go to our website. And as Tina said, if there are any questions or any resources we can help provide, please contact us. I want to echo that. There are so many people doing incredible work, and it's hard to imagine what our city would look like without them. Their budgets are $70 million. Our city and county budgets are $19 million. So the nonprofit sector is doing far more in this space than anyone else. So we're just kind of sometimes the face of this cause, and a huge shout out and a thank you and a bravo to all the men and mostly women that do this really important work every day, as we say, for the animals.
Tena Faust, Tama Lundquist, Tamron Hall, thank you all so much for being our guests on this very special episode of The Balanced Voice. We'll catch everybody else next time. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to today's Balanced Conversation. You can find real solutions and tangible resources in our show notes at thebalancedvoicepodcast.com. To join the conversation, follow us on Instagram at The Balanced Voice Podcast, and on Twitter at @balancevoice_. Stay up to date on Runya's work by following her at The Runya Report, and we can't wait to see you next week for another Balanced Conversation.